Okay, let's talk about the AI boom. It's absolutely everywhere, it's driving the stock market, but there's something strange going on. The very people at the heart of this revolution, the insiders, are starting to send out warnings that this whole thing might just be a giant bubble, ready to burst. And I mean, this alarm's coming from the absolute top. This is Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the company that gave us ChatGPT. He's saying, yeah, there's a kernel of truth here, the tech is real and powerful, but he's also warning that smart people are getting overexcited. And that is a classic recipe for a financial bubble.
So first up, let's dive into these warnings. What's so wild is that Altman isn't some lone voice in the wilderness. Nope, it's becoming a chorus, and it's coming from some of the most powerful people in the entire tech industry.
I mean, take Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. He's not beating around the bush at all. He comes right out and calls it an industrial bubble. He thinks the long-term benefits will be massive for sure, but he's saying what we're seeing right now is a frenzy. And then you have Michael Dell. He's looking at the physical side of things, the actual buildings and servers. He's basically saying, whoa, slow down. We're building these massive AI data centers so fast that we might be overdoing it. It's just not sustainable.
Okay, so why do these warnings matter so much? Because this isn't just some little story for tech nerds anymore. It turns out that all this spending on AI has become the main engine holding up the entire US economy.
So the big question is, just how reliant are we? When you actually peel back the layers and look at the real data behind our economic growth, the numbers, well, they're pretty shocking. Get this, according to one Harvard economist, this is the number that says it all. If you just take out the money being spent on building AI data centers, our GDP growth in the first half of 2024 was basically 0.1%. Let that sink in. The AI build-out is our economic growth. And this chart just drives the point home. Capex is just the money companies spend on big stuff, like buildings and equipment. And right now, a mind-blowing 90% of all of that spending across the entire S&P 500 is coming from AI-related companies. It's not just part of the story, it pretty much is the story. So, this all leads to the really big question. You could call it the true trillion-dollar question. With this absolutely historic amount of money being spent, can the money coming in ever justify it? This is where the whole bubble argument gets really, really strong. Okay, here's the core of the problem. Companies are spending about $350 billion a year right now on AI. But even with the most optimistic, generous projections, the total annual revenue from AI is only expected to hit $339 billion by 2028. You see the problem? The money we hope to be making in 4 years barely covers what we're spending in just 1 year today. And it gets worse. An analysis from the consulting firm Bain just raises the stakes. They figured that for all this spending to make sense, the AI industry needs to be generating $2 trillion in revenue every year by 2030. $2 trillion! That shows you the enormous gap between the hype and the financial reality needed to back it up. Now, this massive gap between investment and profit, it might sound familiar, and it should. Because when we look back at history, there are some pretty scary parallels, and they're acting like giant red flags for what's happening right now. This here is the Shiller-Cape ratio. It's basically a well-respected way to measure if the stock market is overvalued. Right now, it's at a level of 40. The only other times it's been this high were in 1999, right before the dot-com bubble burst, and back in the 1920s, right before that bubble popped. That is not great company to be in. And that leads us to what analysts are nervously watching for, a Cisco moment. Back in the dot-com boom, Cisco was king. They were like the NVIDIA of their day. Everyone thought they were invincible. But then, one day, their earnings weren't quite perfect, and that was the pin that popped the whole bubble. So now everyone is wondering, who's today's Cisco? But forget history for a second. There's some really weird red flags popping up today, like this pattern of circular money. You have a tech giant investing hundreds of millions in a small AI startup. Then that startup immediately turns around and uses that same cash to buy chips back from the giant. You gotta ask, right? Is this real demand, or are companies just funding their own customers to make their sales numbers look bigger than they actually are? And maybe the strangest red flag of them all is this layoff paradox.
You've got companies like Microsoft with stock prices through the roof, telling the world that AI is the future, while at the same time, they're laying off thousands of their skilled workers. It just doesn't add up. If the boom is real and here to stay, why would you let go of all that talent?
So we've gone through the warnings from the top, the crazy economic numbers, the historical echoes, and the current red flags. This brings us to the final part of this story. What happens if the bubble actually pops?
Because history tells us one thing loud and clear. These moments of insane speculation don't just gently fizzle out. They end. And they usually end with a very loud pop.
And the fallout, it wouldn't just be a Silicon Valley problem. A pop could set off a massive domino effect. We're talking a huge stock market correction, a real recession once all that AI spending just stops, and it could ripple out to everything from the housing market to your job security.
So the final question isn't really about whether AI will change the world eventually. It probably will. The question is about right here, right now. Our entire economy has been propped up by this AI promise. So what happens if that check bounces?